On that dark night in March 2025, the fate of global energy markets was being rewritten on the 17th floor of a dimly lit hotel in Geneva. This meeting, absent from Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa's official schedule, would decrease global oil prices by 23% within 72 hours and pull the world economy back from the brink of an energy crisis. Government officials denied its existence for months, but documents now in our possession reveal all details of this series of secret negotiations codenamed Protocol Alpha. Noboa's diplomatic maneuver, conducted behind closed doors and known to only 5 people, came at a moment when oil cartels least expected it. Precisely when OPEC plus countries were preparing to cut production, futures markets were sounding alarms, and energy security was transforming into a global crisis. "No one believed we could do this," begins one of the leaked documents. This note, written in Noboa's own handwriting, emphasized a truth ignored by world leaders, but clearly understood by Ecuador's young leader. Oil crises begin with perception management, not supply-demand balances. In autumn 2024, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and production problems in the North Sea had pushed oil prices above $120 per barrel. The International Energy Agency's emergency meetings were proving fruitless. G20 leaders couldn't find solutions among themselves, and economists warned we were on the verge of an energy crisis, similar to that of the 1970s. At this precise moment, there was a detail no one paid attention to: a sudden and unexplained decline in Ecuador's oil exports. While the world focused on major producers, no one considered Ecuador, a minor player with a daily capacity of 500,000 barrels. But Noboa's plan was built precisely on this perception. According to leaked documents, Noboa's team spent 3 months storing 18% of the country's daily production in special depots, operating outside OPEC's monitoring mechanisms. This strategy, officially attributed to technical maintenance issues, allowed Ecuador to create a secret oil reserve of 2.7 million barrels. Our documents show that Protocol Alpha's chief architect was Dr. Alejandro Vega, Noboa's university friend and current economic advisor. With a PhD in econometrics from MIT, Vega was known for his studies on psychological factors in oil markets, but his departure from academia to join Noboa's cabinet came as a surprise at the time. Other key figures in the operation included financial strategist Maria Suarez from a secret unit of Ecuador's central bank, former Swiss banker Lorenzo Duarte, and Captain Rodrigo Menchia, Noboa's close bodyguard and former Special Forces member. This team gathered in Geneva on March 24, 2025. Special measures were taken to keep the meeting off official records. In Noboa's schedule, the Swiss visit was listed under United Nations Sustainable Development discussions. 2 cups of coffee and a map, recalls a source involved in the operation. President Noboa spread a map showing world oil trade routes on the hotel room table and marked it with colored pens. He was incredibly calm and determined. The negotiations that took place at that table, phone calls with invisible players in the oil market, and the 47-page secret protocol agreement outlined the 3 pillars of the strategy. Ecuador would release its secretly stored 2.7 million barrels of oil just before major producers announced price increases at a price below market expectations. These sales, conducted through a Singapore-based trading company, would create a perception of surprise supply increase in futures markets. Simultaneously, Noboa's team would present a study about a soon-to-be-announced new extraction technology at an energy economists forum known as the OIL Summit. Documents show that Noboa called these 3 moves in perception anchor. This technique, used in psychological operations, aimed to change market perception before creating actual material impact. On the morning of March 29, 2025, an independent energy research company, Global Petro Analytics, published an unexpected report: sudden increase in Ecuador's oil production. The report created a small ripple in the markets, but this was just the beginning. That same afternoon, on the Singapore oil trading platform, an order to sell 500,000 barrels from an unidentified source was placed. The price was 4% below that day's market value. The sale was completed within minutes. "We designed this as a test," says an official from the Protocol Alpha team. "We wanted to measure the market's reaction, and yes, it responded exactly as we expected." While buyers in the oil futures market were trying to understand what was behind this unexpected sale, the second move came into play. A technical director from Ecuador's Ministry of Energy, speaking at an energy conference, made a statement implying that the country was using efficiency-enhancing new technologies in its Amazon region. These three factors, the analysis report, the low price sale, and the technical announcement, created a 2.3% drop in oil futures markets within 24 hours. Though it seemed like a small movement, experts saw it as a harbinger of something much bigger. The genius of Protocol Alpha emerged on the second day of the operation. Brent crude had already fallen to $117 per barrel, but was still at dangerous levels. However, an atmosphere of hesitation had begun to form in the market. It was at this critical moment that Noboa made his real move. Through a private banking institution in Switzerland, Ecuador's hidden 2.2 million barrels of oil were put up for sale to be delivered within 48 hours. The price was 7% below market value. "This was like an all-in move in poker," explains a source familiar with the operation. "We would either win big or the Ecuadorian economy would take a serious hit," but a factor Noboa hadn't calculated came into play. A senior executive from Saudi Aramco expressed concerns about anomalies in the market at a private economic forum. This unexpected comment could have endangered Ecuador's strategy. Leaked documents also show how Noboa handled this crisis. At midnight, making a direct phone call to the Saudi official, Noboa managed to exploit cracks within the oil cartel. While details of the conversation remain largely secret, documents indicate that Noboa proposed a sustainable agreement based on mutual interest. On the morning of March 31st, 2025, as world energy markets opened, no one could predict what would happen in the coming hours. In futures markets, oil prices first fell by 3%, then 7%, and by noon, a total of 12%. While major oil producers were signaling production increases to stabilize the market, Noboa's team was making their third and boldest move. They put all of their remaining 500,000 barrels of oil up for sale in Asian markets at a competitive price. This move created a tremor in futures markets. By the end of the day, oil prices had fallen by a total of 23% to $93 per barrel. "You can compare this to an earthquake," says energy economics expert Dr. Helena Reeves. A small producer like Ecuador applied pressure to exactly the right point at exactly the right time and created a major fracture. While geologically impossible, it was economically feasible. Noboa's bold strategy meant serious financial risk for Ecuador in the short term. The country had sold oil at a price below what it would normally earn. However, in the medium term, this move had three important consequences. Falling oil prices created rapid growth in other sectors of Ecuador's economy, especially manufacturing and tourism. Noboa gained unexpected strategic weight in international energy diplomacy. The success of the protocol provided the country with disproportionate diplomatic influence. Most importantly, foreign direct investment in Ecuador's oil sector increased by 47% over the next 2 months. This is a classic David and Goliath story, evaluates an energy policy analyst. Noboa used the system's own rules against the system. Despite its success, the emergence of Protocol Alpha also brought serious ethical and legal debates. Opposition parties accused Noboa of pursuing such a risky strategy without informing Parliament and the public. In democracies, it is unacceptable for leaders to make such critical economic decisions on their own, says an opposition spokesperson. Being successful doesn't make the method legitimate. However, public opinion polls show that the majority of the public supports Noboa's bold move. Especially the easing of daily living costs due to falling energy prices was a factor that increased public support. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Noboa's strategy was using oil cartels' own tactics against them. For years, major oil producers had manipulated markets through stockpiling, coordinated announcements, and psychological operations. Now, on the other side of the table, a relatively small player like Ecuador was applying the same tactics and succeeding. A former OPEC official says, "What Noboa did was a brilliant application of oligopolistic market strategy. The major producers felt so secure that they never thought a small actor could make such a move." Moreover, Noboa's strategy skillfully utilized not only economic, but also psychological elements. Documents show that the team developed a special strategy for news flow management. Secret meetings with social media analysts, finance bloggers, and energy commentators played a critical role in shaping market perception. Price-setting mechanisms depend more on how the supply-demand balance is perceived than on the actual balance, Noboa wrote in a strategy note. If we change perception, reality will change too. This philosophy formed the essence of Noboa's oil operation, and indeed, the decline in oil prices began with a change in perception before the physical supply increase. Another unknown aspect of Protocol Alpha was the operation's technological infrastructure. Leaked documents revealed that the Ecuadorian government used a special artificial intelligence system for market analyses. This system, codenamed Cassandra, helped identify the most effective intervention points by analyzing micro-movements in futures markets. The oil market is a complex ecosystem where millions of variables interact, says a data scientist who worked on the Cassandra project. It's impossible to comprehend this with traditional analysis methods. Artificial intelligence gave us the ability to see invisible patterns. Cassandra's analyses played a critical role in determining when, where, and at what price Ecuador's oil would be released to the market. In a report dated March 27, 2025, the system recommended that for maximum psychological impact, the sell order should be placed 20 minutes before Asian markets close. And indeed, Noboa's team followed this advice precisely. On March 30th, the sell order placed at 1640 Singapore time created a much larger ripple in the market than expected. Another interesting aspect of Protocol Alpha was the operation's financing. Bypassing the traditional banking system, the Ecuadorian government made transactions untraceable using cryptocurrencies. Blockchain technology gave us invisibility, says an official who managed the financial aspect of the operation. Traditional systems would immediately detect such an operation, but by using cryptocurrency, we managed to hide not only the movement, but also the actor behind it. Another important factor behind Protocol Alpha's success was timing. Noboa's team was insistent on making the intervention at exactly the right time. According to leaked documents, the operation was postponed twice. Timing is everything, Noboa noted in a strategic assessment report. Without the right timing, even the most brilliant strategy will fail. And indeed, March 29th to 31st, 2025 was a critical period for oil markets. OPEC plus countries were set to announce new production cuts in early April. In the U.S., a congressional session on the status of strategic oil reserves was planned, and China was preparing to announce the details of its 5-year energy plan. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of the operation occurred on the night of March 30th, when the Saudi Aramco executive called Noboa. Leaked documents showed that the Saudi official did not make a direct threat, but warned about the consequences of abnormal movements in the market. Noboa's response was an example of diplomatic mastery. We're all in the same boat. No one wants to sink the boat, but everyone has the right to change the boat's direction. This metaphorical answer changed the tone of the conversation and created common ground between the parties. According to documents, the Saudi official emphasized coordination and mutual understanding. After this conversation, Noboa's team activated the final phase of the strategy, selling the last oil reserve in Asian markets. This move deepened the decline in the markets and permanently lowered oil prices to a new level. On the evening of March 31st, a development with immediate impact on the global economy occurred. Oil prices fell by $27 per barrel in 24 hours to $93. This was the biggest daily drop since the 2008 financial crisis. Financial analysts were in shock. Energy company stock values were falling, and oil cartels were holding emergency meetings. But Noboa was calmly watching global developments from the presidential palace in Quito. The president was slightly smiling while watching the news, recalls an advisor. He made no comment. He just said, "Sometimes small stones create big waves." This wave spread to the world economy in the following weeks. Falling energy prices helped control inflation. Central banks found room for interest rate cuts. Consumer confidence rose. But perhaps most importantly, Protocol Alpha created a change in the power balance of energy markets. Now, major producers had seen that small players could also affect the market. This could be a first step towards a more balanced and predictable price structure. In diplomatic circles, this approach, beginning to be referred to as the Noboa Doctrine, presented a new model for how small countries could negotiate with great powers. The skillful combination of strategic thinking, technological innovation, and psychological operations could upset traditional power balances. Protocol. Alpha's impact on the world economy was not limited to the drop in oil prices. This operation also exposed the fragility of the global financial system and its vulnerability to manipulation. Financial analysts comment, "This is a striking reminder of how the modern financial system is built on perception. Trillion-dollar markets can sometimes change direction with a small intervention made at the right time in the right place." This fact raised deep questions about the foundations of the global economic system. If a relatively small actor like Ecuador could affect world oil markets to this degree, could other markets also be open to similar manipulations? Economists predict this will reignite debates about the regulation and supervision of the financial system. Perhaps what we need is more transparency and stronger oversight mechanisms. But perhaps the most interesting effect of Protocol Alpha was on developing countries. Ecuador's success inspired other countries in similar situations. Now small economies were rethinking their place in the international system. This is not just an oil operation, but also an empowerment story, says Dr. Carlos Fuentes, an expert on South American economies. Noboa showed that small countries can also create impact on the world stage by thinking strategically and acting boldly. This impact began to be felt in other commodity markets in the following months. From Colombian coffee producers to Ghanaian cocoa exporters, many countries began developing similar tactics to better understand market dynamics and gain strategic advantages. After the successful completion of the operation, Noboa hosted his team at a special ceremony at the presidential palace in Quito. In this meeting, which did not appear in official records, each team member was given a specially designed gold pen with the inscription, "Perception shapes reality." The meticulous security protocols implemented throughout Protocol Alpha deserve special attention. Every aspect of the operation was protected by extraordinary measures against potential intelligence leaks. Team communications were conducted through specialized encrypted channels that left minimal digital footprints. Even more fascinating was Noboa's insistence on using old-school methods for the most sensitive decisions, handwritten notes that were immediately destroyed after reading. In today's digital surveillance age, sometimes the most secure communication method is the oldest one, a senior intelligence advisor noted. You can't hack a whisper or intercept a burned piece of paper. This obsession with operational security extended to the selection of meeting locations. The Geneva Hotel wasn't chosen randomly. It had previously hosted discreet negotiations between opposing Cold War powers and maintained a reputation for exceptional privacy protocols. Hotel staff were unaware of their guests' true identities, with team members using diplomatic covers, and arriving separately over a 48-hour period to avoid detection. The academic world's response to Protocol Alpha has been particularly intriguing. Leading economics departments at prestigious universities now include case studies of the Noboa maneuver in their curriculum. What makes this operation so fascinating from an academic perspective is how it challenges fundamental assumptions about market efficiency, explains Professor Richard Thaler of the University of Chicago, a behavioral economics pioneer. It demonstrates that psychological factors can sometimes override traditional economic forces, especially in markets driven by speculation and future expectations. Harvard Business School has developed an entire course module examining the psychological warfare aspects of Protocol Alpha, with special emphasis on Noboa's masterful use of information cascades and strategic ambiguity. The implications extend beyond economics into the realm of international relations theory, where scholars debate whether Protocol Alpha represents a new model of asymmetric economic warfare that could reshape power dynamics between developed and developing nations. Perhaps most remarkable is how Protocol Alpha has influenced a new generation of young leaders across the global South. University enrollment in economics and international relations programs has surged in several Latin American countries, with students specifically citing Noboa's strategic vision as inspiration. Before Protocol Alpha, many of us believed our countries were destined to remain pawns in a game controlled by major powers, says Maria Fernandez, a student leader at Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Now we understand that with the right combination of intelligence, timing, and courage, even smaller nations can reshape the rules of the game. How will history evaluate the Midnight Protocol? A bold economic move or a dangerous gamble? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. But one thing is certain: Daniel Noboa rewrote the rules of global energy diplomacy at a moment no one expected, in an unexpected way. And perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that leadership is sometimes shaped by steps taken in darkness, with courage. Great crises require great leaders, and Daniel Noboa showed the necessary leadership at that critical moment when the fate of the world economy was being determined in a hotel room. Protocol Alpha is no longer a secret, but its legacy will continue to be felt in energy markets and global diplomacy for many years to come.